Pokémon Scarlet and Violet released 1 year ago today. Or at least I think so. I'm not sure exactly when this video will be out, but either way, it's pretty close. And this generation has some banger Pokémon. The starters are great, Fuecoco obviously being the best one with the best final evolution. Charcadet and its evolutions are looking slick. Brevard, Cyclizar, Annihilate, Tinkaton, Ogre bro? You get the idea. Paldea is looking fresh. And just like every generation before, there's a new set of gimmick Pokemon lurking the depths of the region. Introducing the monsters of Area Zero, the enigmas of Paldea, it's time we talk about the Paradox Pokémon. So, what are Paradox Pokémon, you may ask? Well, these creatures are a group of Pokemon that can be found in the Great Crater of Paldea, specifically in Area Zero. And they are split into two groups, the ancient Pokemon and the future Pokemon. Relatives of current day Pokemon, all from different points in time. At least that's the idea. But there's also another possibility that explains these creatures' existence, as Area Zero is filled with magical crystals that can twist reality according to the wishes of those who go there. And through sheer desire, influenced by the many who have explored the crater, the crystals would go on to create the Paradox Pokémon, in forms that Professor Sada and Professor Turo expected the Pokémon to look like. The ancient ones being bigger and primal, and the future ones being robotic and sleek. Meaning these Pokemon aren't paradoxes because they're in the wrong point in time, but rather because they shouldn't exist at all. Theory crafting aside though, I love them. Paradox Pokemon are easily my favorite group of gimmick mons ever. To see a glimpse into the past and future of the Pokemon world is really fun, and all these relatives are looking mighty clean, but some are more clean than others. So today, I'm going to rank all the Paradox Pokemon. A couple things to make clear first. To me, even the lowest of the low Paradoxmon is definitely a high C tier, so I don't really dislike any of them. And of course, if Pokemon decides to reveal any new Paradoxmons sometime near when this video is released, then, oh well. And without further ado, let's get to the ranking. Violet gets a lot of flack for its Paradox forms all being robots, basically trying to do the Robo Yokai thing, except worse. And while I still think they're pretty cool, Violet really isn't helping its case with getting the Swords of Justice as robots as well. Scarlet is getting the legendary Beast as freaking dinosaurs, and Violet gets one of the most mid-legendary trios ever and made him say beep boop, and Iron Crown is unfortunately the most boring of the lot so far. You really can't take the concept of a noble warrior and make it into a mechanical being. It kinda loses the whole point that way. I was never a fan of Cobalion to begin with anyway, but I can at least admit it has a very regal vibe, yet Iron Crown just doesn't. I will give it this though. It will definitely be better than the Paradox Terrakion. Yeah, Violet really got the short end of the stick on this one. Scarlet took the legendary beast for Paradoxes, Galar cooked with some regional legendary birds, the Lake Guardians are much worse honestly, so forget them. Iron Leaves is another member of the Swords of Justice, just roboticized. But it is much more appealing than Iron Crown. The colors and design complement itself better, but it is still by no means that interesting. Well, look what we have here. It's Brute Bonnet. And this thing looks stupid. And no, I don't mean the design. I mean it literally looks like it has two life objectives in its brain. Eat and attack. And to be fair, it's got the apparel for that lifestyle. Two shield arms to bash the heads of its enemies with, and a spiked head to show he means business. Brute Bonnet may be a little bit ugly, but it's like a primal ugly. A pre-hygiene era ugly. This ain't some fun guy. You mess with a mushroom, you get sporadicated. Iron Jugulus honestly creates more questions than anything. It's said to be the offspring of a Hydreigon that fell in love with a robot, and considering the amount of Pokemon that supposedly become robots in the future, that's not very specific. But it's clear to see what dominant genes Iron Jugulis inherited, as it looks super similar to its father. And that also means it's half organic? A cyborg? I mean, it has to be. But I guess whatever organic parts it has are on the inside of its robotic shell. I do like him, but it's a bit too similar to Hydreigon if you ask me. The other future ones are a lot more distinct comparatively. But hey, it's still an awesome three-headed robot. Raging Bolt is a little conflicting to me. Because, you know, it looks kind of ridiculous. It's like Lady Longneck in Spirited Raikou and it ended up looking like a dinosaur. And yet, as silly as it looks, it's also pretty cool. The mane wrapping around its head as if it's peeking over the clouds is a nice touch. And it's also freaking giant, over 17 feet tall of a beast. The main thing holding it back is the color. The yellow is a bit too bright and the red-orange is very saturated, but I have a feeling in natural lighting, Raging Bolt is even more awesome. I've never been much of a Hariyama fan myself, but Iron Hands is quite a bit more appealing to me. A bulky sumo robot with giant electric palms? Yes please! Iron Hands will crush its enemies into a pulp, use its defibrillators to wake them back up, and then beat the stuffing out of them again. There's a theory that Iron Hands was once an athlete that needed to become a cyborg to live on. And while it's likely the athlete was just a Hariyama, it's funny imagining a human being made into a robotic Hariyama. Of all the Pokemon forms you could give to them, why would you choose Hariyama? Being a Robo Machamp has got to be on the table, right? Unlike its incredibly destructive ancestor, Iron Thorns would rather use the power of knowledge than violence. Said to be highly intelligent, this thing is apparently what Tyranitar looks like a billion years into the future. I guess the species got tired of destroying mountains and malforming landscapes all the time. Now they are much calmer, friendlier than they look. Meaning, you really have to get on its bad side if it wants to attack you. Once you see those thorns light up, its billion-year-old instincts kick back in to demolish everything in its path. Just like the good old days. Iron Treads is quite the specimen. It's basically a metal ball with treads it can use to roll around like a droidica or something. And with its ears that it likely uses for balance, and the small tusks, it's a little robot elephant. I love it. Donphan was always in need of something more, as it is very dull for an elephant Pokemon. And Iron Treads was able to take the base design and literally evolve it into something pretty cool. The color is great too, the sleek silver body alongside the black treads and glowing red energy. Iron Treads does a lot and it works so well. Fluttermane is definitely the most basic of Scarlet's Paradox Pokémon, as it is basically a Misdreavus, except a lot hairier, and it has bloodshot eyes and a tail that's also its head. If this thing were to appear next to you and yell bloody murder though, you'd probably be a lot more frightened by it than a Misdreavus. You might even die, since Fluttermane is apparently a very aggressive creature. Maybe that's why Misdreavus would eventually go on to develop a lust for fear. Its ancestors must have scared the heck out of everything a lot easier back then, when all the Pokemon were pea-brained. Because after all, if you're not scary, what kind of a Misdreavus are you? It is theorized that Iron Valiant is the product of a mad scientist who wanted to create the most powerful psychic Pokemon ever. Because I guess nobody learned from Mewtwo why that's a bad idea. And considering Iron Valiant's cruel nature, we can guess that once it was born, it immediately killed the mad scientist. Which was probably well deserved, if we're honest here. And the final product isn't even psychic type, so they definitely failed, which is also deserved. But, to give the scientist credit, at least Iron Valiant is really freaking cool. A mix of Gardevoir and Gallade wasn't a bad call in the slightest. Creating it though, well, that's a different story. Extremely dangerous, kill on sight. Roaring moon. Speed, unknown. Size, unknown. The unholy offspring of dragon and darkness itself. Never engage this Pokemon. Your only chance, hide and pray it does not find you. That was the more dramatic way of saying that it should be avoided at all costs. This thing is extremely savage and even more awesome. Roaring Moon took the goofy look of Mega Salamence and made it into a respectable, ferocious beast. You can tell that when this Pokemon flies across the sky, other Pokemon run and hide for their lives. Not to mention, its loud roar definitely sends shivers down the spines of everything else around. A natural-born hunter, feared by all. Iron Bundle is more than a robotic delibird, as it is said to have been created by an ancient civilization. And considering that humans definitely didn't have the technology to make something like a robot back in the day, let alone a replica of a modern-day delibird, perhaps we are the ancient civilization. And since Iron Bundle is clearly a lot less advanced than the others, that would mean that Iron Bundle is probably an animatronic. One whose prime directive is to give you presents. Isn't that nice? It's definitely not a representation of capitalist Christmas, it's just a cute little robot bird. Now, who wants presents? Okay, now we're talking. Suicune was already a pretty nice Pokemon on its own, and yet you never would have guessed that making it into a dinosaur would turn out this great. Walking Wake feels surprisingly natural considering its origin as one of the legendary beasts, who are all mammals. While this is definitely reptilian, the withered crest on its head helps make it look a lot more ancient, its massive purple mane is wild and unkempt, and its two flowing tails look like the flow of water. I honestly don't know how this concept could have been done any better. They nailed it with Walking Wake. Volcarona felt like a clear choice when designing what an ancient relative of it would look like. Moths in real life can get super hairy anyway, so Slitherwing being a creepy crawling fluff ball just makes sense. And it's super cute. It's a 10-foot tall moth with a fluffy coat and it stands on two legs to fight. If you were to hug it, you would sink into its hair. What's not to love about Slitherwing? It's a creepy crawling moth. Iron Moth is one of the few Violet Paradox Mons that I'm sure most people would agree didn't have to change much compared to its current day form. Volcarona already looks like a stationary being that hovers around, so Iron Moth, being an alien satellite with solar panel wings, it's perfect. If it's truly an alien invention made to observe humanity, then of course making it resemble Volcarona would work. It doesn't look out of place, and it serves its purpose. Not to mention, it resembles Eve, who is also a robot made to observe the Earth. Perhaps some inspiration going on there. If Roaring Moon wasn't a menace that controlled the skies and terrorized the land, then Great Tusk would easily be the most feared ancient Pokemon. I'm pretty sure I speak for all of us when I say that taking on a massive tank covered in spikes sounds like a bad idea. Great Tusk's glare alone would make other Pokemon think twice before attacking it. It looks like an actual monster, a rampaging beast. It's absolutely incredible. I love everything about Great Tusk. The jagged mouth, the dark purple plates, its pink spikes and fur, its death glare. Elephants are my favorite animal in real life, and to finally have a great elephant Pokemon fills me with so much glee. Took you long enough, Game Freak, but I admit you cooked with this one. A gourmet meal of a specimen. So you're telling me that Screamtail is a relative of Jigglypuff from 1 billion years ago? Never mind the fact that complex life didn't even appear on Earth until about 400 million years after that. I'm more surprised that this species has always looked this adorable. Screamtail, like its ancient brethren, is a lot bigger and meaner than its current day form. And instead of singing cute little lullabies to put you to sleep, it would rather yell out painful melodies until you're sleeping. With the fishes. Whatever the case may be, Screamtail is fantastic. You can tell even evolution thought so, since it didn't change much over the past billion years. The Earth's very first cutie pie. 10,000 years will give you such a crick in the neck. Except that Sandy Shocks doesn't have a neck. So instead, it gave them a lot of metal shavings and a bangin' rockstar look. It would take a lot of creativity to guess what a modern robot creature looked like in ancient times. And this? This is exactly what I'd expect. Sandy Shocks is a believable representation of a primal robot. Something that existed way before technology was even an idea that any creature could ponder. And I think that's what I love about it so much. The creativity involved with making a robot hairier and less advanced. It's also got a design that scratches a lot of itches. It's cool, it's cute, and it's clever. Go on, Sandy Shocks. You're awesome. Miraidon, Violet's box legendary, also known as the Iron Serpent, capable of turning the land to ash with the power of its lightning. And considering all the Pokemon in the future are robots, that's a lot more impressive than we'd give it credit for now. Miraidon could cause an endless barrage of lightning and power surge all the future Pokemon until they literally exploded. Not that our Miraidon would ever do that, as it happens to be one of the kinder ones. And I adore it as well. Of course I do. We all do. It's one of the main Pokemon of the freaking generation, one that you connect with personally. Really the only thing holding back Miraidon a bit is the fact that it's a robot, and robots aren't that expressive. But despite that, you can still tell that there's a soul in there. And it's one zappy, sandwich-loving fella. I'm sure when Cyclizar sees Miraidon, it feels a sense of comfort and a bit of jealousy, knowing that one day their species will become this awesome. Koraidon, Scarlet's box legendary, also known as the Winged King. Roaring Moon might be way more savage. Would probably hunt the other Pokemon to extinction if it could. That is if Koraidon didn't keep them in check. Capable of breaking the land with its bare fist. You'd have an actual death wish if you dare challenge this legend. An ancient Pokemon that rules the land, sea, and sky. It doesn't demand fear. It earns respect. Easily one of my favorite legendaries we've ever had in the franchise. Maybe that has something to do with the fact that you're able to connect with it throughout the story. And unlike its future counterpart, Koraidon is super expressive and full of life. Endless personality and undeniable charm. It also just looks so cool. Do I even need to explain that? I mean, just look at it. Just look at what you're looking at right now. Koraidon knows how powerful it is. The confidence and lack of fear for its enemies makes it that much better. Truly a king of respectable status. Which is why Koraidon is my #1 favorite Paradox Pokemon. And with all that being said, we have come to the end of the ranking. I love Paradox Pokemon so much. Such a fun design concept to make Pokemon for. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed, I hope you don't mind liking and subscribing. It really helps me out a ton. And without further ado, have a good day, and goodbye everyone!